All right, this is Michael here, and I'm with my co host.
John?
And we are back for chat room to discuss student loan relief. That's right, or student debt relief, as it's also called. And this is big in the news. Obviously, it's something that's under consideration, but it's also really big because it's just one of the largest growing forms of debt. In fact, according to Fortune, in a 2019 report, student loan debt has doubled in the past 10 years, which means it's growing faster than any other type of household debt. And this has impacted people in grad school, people wanting to go to undergrad, and of course, debt just impacts everybody's purchasing power and even the economy. So it's a big part of American life, especially. It's a big part of people's lives, especially closer to your age, John, as a recent college grad. But even people my age, I know plenty of millennials still paying off debt. And so we're going to,
Hmm.
yeah, curious to think what you think personally, but also, kind of discuss the pros and cons of it all.
Yes, sir. So I'm gonna start off with like some pros and cons, pretty much just talking about like the benefits of relieving student debt and like the downfalls to it. So the first benefit to relieving student debt is we've actually seen like a slow in the economy. There's actually a few studies on it that the economy has been slowed, and that's kind of like just normal consumer goods because they're saving money every month just to make their payments. So we would see like a huge boost in the economy if the debt was forgiven. So that's like the first benefit to relieving student debt. And so my first big con to relieving student debt is it's very unfair and unfortunate to the people that have been paying their student debt or either paid it off in the previous years. And that could just start, it's just not fair to the people that have worked hard their whole lives, went to college, had their debt above their shoulders and paid it off, worked very hard, raised families. And now that the new generations are just like, oh, just forget about it. And also I think the second con to that, because it kind of goes with this one, is if we have $1 trillion in debt from all the people that have taken out student debt and we just take it away, I feel like it's kind of like the same thing as like if you never raised your kid to not back talk, it's always going to back talk. You know what I mean? It's like there's no lesson learned there from showing you like, if, okay, so you took this debt out to get a job, to have a better education, and to possibly better your life. So now you're just going to have a better life, but you didn't really see the debt part. So there's no lesson learned there. So, now, if you take those skills and go to like, let's say a mortgage, that's not going to get forgiven. So, you know what I mean? It just doesn't teach the young generation like a good lesson for like how to be responsible with debt, and that it needs to be paid back to keep the economy running.
So this is definitely where I have some thoughts. So personally, I've never believed in that first argument, though I know that is probably the most contentious part of this,
Yeah.
is because even people that I would have assumed would have agreed with me on this have kind of posted exactly what you're saying. They're like, we had to pay debts, why wouldn't they? But one argument I would make immediately is that costs for colleges are substantially higher than even 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. It
You're
is
right.
not the same level of debt. The debt that my parents, your parents, had to pay, if they had to pay it at all, if you're in an affluent family, it may not be a big deal anyways,
Right.
is just becoming an increasingly greater and greater burden, and it is putting off this generation's ability to afford houses, which, with cost rising is already a challenge.
Right. Yeah.
And I've always felt, when you think you want it better, you want life better for your kids, this would be an example of that. I would be fine knowing that I paid my 10 years or whatever for student debt. That's fine, for other people to not have to. I mean, there's many things that we have done in this country, you know, positive changes that people in the past suffered for, but why do we necessarily need to pass on that suffering?
Right. Yeah.
That's my opinion as far as that at least.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough subject because also, kind of going with what you said, our parents' generation, they also, got put on when they got out of college, which means, like if you got a bachelor's in business or a bachelor's in psychology, you landed a pretty good job with pretty good paying. So, that kind of helps your argument a little bit better. It was actually easier to afford housing and pay off your debt quicker because, making 40 grand, 50 grand a year in the 1980s was awesome.
Yeah.
Because, you could buy a nice brick home in a nice neighborhood for 60 grand, making 40K a year because you went to college. And then, you know what I mean? So it just made everything more simple. But it seems like we're almost still getting out of college making 40 grand a year, and we've got 100 grand of debt, and home prices are 350,000, the average small town of Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I get what you're saying there. It definitely is an issue
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. And I will say, like, one thing maybe to to give you some ammunition too to look at it from a different angle is, so stuff I've been reading going back to that Fortune article is it does say that they quote a senior fellow at Brookings Institute, who's discussed kind of this different, you know, debt relief over the last, decade, so they've looked into it, that people who go to college and graduate from college are often in a better economic and financial shape. So while this would help a lot of people, it's targeting people that are already maybe middle class, which is good, but there's other economic disparity issues we're having. And really, if the value of education is still strong, the value of a 4-year degree, or even 2-year degree, anything that you're taking loans out for, it would be great if we just made that cheaper anyways. Then there wouldn't have to be as much debt in the first place. So
Right.
it's like we can still have the conversation about, erasing debt, how much you can erase debt from people. But yeah, there definitely needs to be a simultaneous conversation. And this is something I wholeheartedly agree with, about finding ways to make college more affordable.
Yeah. Well, that's another con that I had, making it more affordable. I've read a lot of articles that, I'm not really 100% sure how this all would go down, but if they did relieve the debt of students, it would inflate the future prices to even go back up, like even more up, which, a lot of people are predicting that prices, not only with inflation, but the debt relief is going to make college even more expensive.
Yeah.
And I'd have to do a lot more research to actually understand the concept of why it would make it more expensive. But I just know that taking that debt away does have a con as far as future prices.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be interested in that because, yeah, I don't necessarily know the mechanics of how it works. Short term, the federal government would take a hit as far as kind of their coffers and getting more money, though you could argue, and I think you kind of brought this up maybe as a pro early on, that having that money back in kind of the world and people's pockets would act almost as a stimulus, and
Hmm.
people would be able to spend more, which I know that's kind of, one of the worries of like how we got to inflation now. So, you could have that argument, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, I know this is kind of off topic, but for future plans, I think, to kind of stop this debt problem with college going away, and they might do this a lot, but I think they should start sponsoring more businesses like colleges. And what I mean by that is like they should start going to business owners and saying like, hey, do you have any roles where college students, can come work here and their dorm is free, their
Yeah,
food is free, their school. And I don't really know how these things would go together, but there needs to be more resources to where, you can put in the work and still be able to go to college and, and kind of make that schedule work. Like I would have loved if I could have, went to school from like, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., like 2 or 3 classes or whatever,
yeah,
and then went to work until 5 p.m. and then did my homework till like 7 p.m., and then been done with the day. And knowing that your college was getting paid for, and you don't really need too much money to do other things because all the resources you need pretty much besides like groceries and I guess fun things to do would be on campus. And there's not enough resources for everybody to do that
yeah,
on college.
yeah. It does make me think of, because you'll see, like Taco Bell or McDonald's, I think both have had these programs, and you go in there and there's like a little thing on the table. And it's
Yeah,
like, work for us, we'll pay off, we'll pay for you to go to college.
it's a scam.
But that's one idea of what you're talking about is that
Yeah,
that could be an option. But something I know others do, and this is so hard because again, you need a college degree for so many entry level jobs. But I know a lot of places like the bigger companies, the Fortune 500 companies, if you're wanting, if somehow you work for one of them and you don't have an undergrad degree, sometimes they'll pay. Similarly, you have that for grad school. So let's say you do already have a college degree, they'll help in that way. I mean,
yeah,
for me, I didn't really get to take advantage of this because I'd already done pretty much all the education I wanted to do by the time I got the job. But I worked for the university in Chattanooga, at UTC, and I had available to me the ability to take so many credit classes every year, and it would have
yeah.
been no cost. Again, too late for me, but I think that's yeah, somewhat kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and another subject I kind of want to hit on is one of the biggest problems with student debt is not even like the schooling aspect of college. A lot of people are taking loans out to pay for their college, which is, I know at the University of Tennessee, like if you don't have any scholarships, the average full time student is paying about 3 to 4 thousand bucks just for the classes. And then, in those 3 or 4 classes you're taking for 6 months, you're averaging somewhere about 500 bucks in books. Then you're gonna, average about another 1,000 in food. You're gonna average another 3,000 in your dorm. So you're talking 8, 9 grand per semester. And people are taking out $9,000 loans per semester. So, I think the dorming situation, most people want to get out of the house as soon as they get out of high school. And I think that aspect needs to change if you're not going to work for it. That would save a lot of debt, a lot of debt.
Yeah, that's so hard too, because I mean, obviously, like if you look at what a student pays, yeah, there's all these kind of fees and stuff like that. And to me, I've always loved the dorm experience. I think that's so beneficial. You
Yeah,
talk about kind of your referencing earlier of what you think students should have to, go through. Like by getting debt, they kind of have this knowledge of how to deal with debt. And I
yeah,
feel like college dorms is a great way to kind of get independence. So, yeah, it's hard for me to be like, this is the spot where we need to cut costs. This is the spot here. But
yeah. That's true. I know in my college experience, I stayed at a dorm, the first couple semesters, actually, like, first 2 years. And I also stayed in an apartment where I started working my last 2 years, like my junior, senior year, working and going to school. And I just know that second half of my college career was so much like more beneficial for me to like go to work, pay for my own apartment, pay for my own food for my dog, you know what I mean? And like it just felt like I grew so much in those years versus like being in a dorm, not having anywhere to park, dealing with parking tickets,
yeah,
paying $3,000 for, taking out debt for that. It just, I don't know. I feel like I could have cut at least like 10 grand, you know what I mean, of like payments by just like going to work and managing to go to school. Because if you think about it, we're so young when we go into college. Like just because it's a 4 year degree doesn't mean you have to do it in 4 years. You know what I mean? Like you've got so much time,
yeah,
and I feel like that's another thing. Everyone's trying to get out of there in 4 years, but if you think about it, those are your young days. This is the best time of your life. Like whether you're taking 2 classes, 1 class, 3 class. The goal is just to get the degree. So like however it fits you the best. I think that's what is going to stop debt. If your parents want to pay for you to go to school, have fun. You know what I mean? If you don't have parents' assistance and you don't have scholarship assistance, get a job, pay for 1 class or 2 classes or 3 classes, or be a full-time student if you can afford it. But there's no race to the finish line.
yeah,
Whether you're 28 years old and you somehow manage to graduate debt free, that means so much more than graduating at like 23, $50,000 in debt. I mean, think about it.
yeah. Well,
You know what I
and a
mean?
lot of people don't realize this is just something I know from my dad working in colleges and universities, but the average degree completion is around like 5 years. A 4 year degree is not actually typical because, as you probably remember, you think it's going great, and then all of a sudden you need that one class, but oh, you're not going to be able to get it this semester, and you have to get these other ones, and it throws off your
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I know what you're saying, but you're talking to the wrong guy. I did it three and a
what?
half.
What?
Yes,
Oh my
sir.
God.
I went to Chat State and got a degree in industrial maintenance technician. It's like trade school, and then I went to UTC. I'm only 23 as we
Yeah.
speak. Think about it.
That's, first of all, impressive. I didn't realize that. And actually, you kind of allude to one option people have perhaps to avoid debt, which is get that associate degree first, because
Yeah,
Chat State would have been comparatively cheaper, at least I know, compared to
I
UTC.
had to get the free college before I went to the expensive.
So, how do you feel about that? Like, is your thought on free college? Because, I didn't have that as an option. So, do you think that I should be upset at you because you got to get free college and I didn't?
In a way, yes. Any community college in Tennessee is a good option.
Yeah.
The problem with it is I know my cousin, she went to Chat State for free, and those classes did not align with the degree because she kept her same degree going into UTC, and she went in as like a freshman and a half or something.
Oh, yeah.
So even and she wasted 2 years at Chat State to be a freshman and a half. So she still had to do 3 years, and you're supposed to go in there as a junior to UTC. That's how it's supposed to work. I think it's gotten better from what I've heard, but when it first started out, those credits and everything weren't really transferring.
Yeah, it's not a perfect system, but it's definitely something that is available. And I, for one, am not upset, John, again, that you got to do that. I was very excited that it happened.
Yeah, and personally, my none of my credits transformed. I or transferred. I did a trade school
Yeah,
things, and UTC doesn't have trade school options, which they
yeah,
should. But yeah. So I just kind of went a whole different route at Chat State. It was kind of like a 1 year and done, and it's more of like a certificate more than associates, even though it is an associate's degree. But it's more of like a like if you wanted to be like a maintenance man at like a big plant, like Volkswagen or something like that.
sure.
I kind of just did it just because it's like if the 4 year, like things can happen in a 4 year degree, like whether you don't go to college anymore or whether you do. So I kind of just was like, well, let me get this in a year. That way, if I need to start working, next year, I've got something. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? I didn't want to gamble the for 4 years.
yeah, yeah. So, still speaking to your personal experience, but also speaking about an example of a program that you yourself might like, though I don't know again if you think it's playing favorites, but they set up a program, I think it's been 8 years ago now, and it was supposed to help people that became teachers, and it was supposed to basically give them debt forgiveness after the fact.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, if you look this up, and if anybody listening is aware of this, it has kind of been infamously mismanaged and misrun, and a lot of people were not understanding what they needed to do. Typical kind of bureaucracy. There was a lot of documents and stuff that people just weren't hitting. And finally, like, we were kind of researching this ahead, John and I, and we saw that there was a lot of debt forgiveness that was already happening.
Yeah.
And a big part of it is this. Basically, this was something that was supposed to be happening and wasn't, so now it's happening. So, if you're looking at the news and you're not reading, paying too much attention, you may already think that debt relief is happening on a grand scale. Not really, it's kind of these issues that are being fixed. But again, this is something you yourself, with an education degree ultimately from UTC, you could have benefited because it was like, okay, you go get an education degree and then go to a school and work so many years and then your debt will be paid off. So is that something that you yourself would like? Because that is kind of your discussion. You're not working necessarily concurrently while you're in school, but you are working right after and you're working in the job, that you want.
Yeah, that is something I would like, but I think it should be kind of combined. Like, I think it should start like that should be part of your degree. You know what I mean? Like, I think like there should be programs to where you graduate, whether it's 6 years, 4 years, however the universities want to set it up, whether it's working for the university, whether it's working, as a teacher, whether it's working for a company. If it takes you 6 years, when you walk across that stage, you should feel proud, you should have a degree, and you should be debt free. And in that experience, you socialized where you hit off, you worked, you studied, you took tests, you printed papers. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? You did the whole thing. And I feel like that will really prepare you more than just sitting in a dorm, and typing some papers and submitting it and walking away $60,000. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. It kind of limits people too. Like, like a lot of people, they get these degrees. They're like, oh, I'm going to go work in California for CNN or New York. And, it's like, how are you going to get there when you owe $500 a month just in debt?
Oh
It just
yeah.
makes everything so much harder. And I think it just kind of like, it's a buzzkill when you walk across that stage. That's why, like, a lot of people I've talked to in the last years, like this, they're like, oh yeah, I graduated college, but whatever. It's, I don't know, debt just doesn't motivate people. It never will.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, not only does it not motivate you, but it's kind of like always there lurking in the background. Yeah, you're
Hmm.
struggling with it.
As Dave Ramsey says, Sally Mae, make sure you get a bedroom when you're shopping for a house for Sally Mae, because she's always going to be there. It's kind of stepping away from the debt. Most people graduate college, no experience, and a lot of places that want you to apply say you need a college degree and experience. But if you've sat in a dorm on your computer typing up essays, you don't have experience.
Yeah.
So the whole system in college needs to honestly be changed to an extent. You know what I mean? That way you can get both worlds, because experience is huge. I mean, it is so much bigger than a degree almost. You almost need 50 and 50 to make 100%. So part of your college degree should be working alongside with somebody that actually knows what they're doing from a company, so you can actually have that experience plus the degree plus debt free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the goal is not really to make money from the company. It's the company's writing a check to the university, and you're doing your services by learning that company and helping them. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're doing anything for free and just getting handouts anymore. And I think that would just make everybody so much more successful from here on.
So it's kind of like almost an apprenticeship, a very
Yes.
modern take on
Yes.
apprenticeship.
Yeah, but they don't do that with 4-year degrees, and I don't know why. It seems like they only do that with the hands on careers, like the union and stuff.
What about, I mean, I guess for your degree, like they would have had you teach so much, right? I mean, it's still
Hmm.
not the same as you're not
Right.
actually, you're only shadowing for like part of your time.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you should go into college shadowing slash going to school.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like you should be able to actually feel like you've done this job for 4 to 6 years and went to school and got the college experience when you graduate.
Yeah.
You should feel all those things.
Yeah, and I definitely know that in some ways I was an outlier because I did work kind of somewhat relevant jobs, like either in the summer, or I definitely did a couple of years where I either interned or I worked for my department of my major and I worked
Yeah.
on different projects. But I know a lot of people that I was going to school with were not working either at all, or they weren't working in their field or anything adjacent to what they wanted to do. So
Right.
yeah, that's something I've always thought would be good to promote either way, whether it's kind of part of the system you're proposing or just
Yeah.
at all. It never felt like people did it enough. And you're right, you're just kind of like tossed out. Here's a degree. You're kind of book smart now. Maybe depending on your thing program, you have a little experience, but often not a lot. So good luck.
Yeah. And don't forget the debt. Make sure you
Yeah,
make
yeah,
that
yeah.
payment.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep. Yep, remember, put the tassel on the other side. Don't check your bank account. Good luck.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. And it says a lot, and I know it's because this is fairly recent for us and we think about money, we think about finances, and we think about education. But I think it says a lot that this is something that in various ways we've returned to a few times on chat room is the discussion of education. And it's a big part of, what our country needs, what our country does, both well and poorly at the same time. So yeah,
Hmm.
I'm sure it's something we will discuss even more in the episodes to come.
Yes, sir. Make sure you like and subscribe.